Assalamu alaikum viewers and welcome back to Prime Live. The United Kingdom is battling its worst riots in 13 years after a far-right anti-immigrant protesters have attacked mosques as well as immigration centres and people of colour. The unrest has been sparked after misinformation was spread that went viral on social media following the deaths of 3 young girls who were killed in a mass stabbing incident. Maulana Idris Nawab is the Imam of Khatib of the Worthing Mosque in one of the biggest seaside towns on Britain's south coast. He joins us now to tell us a bit more about what is going on at the moment in the UK. Assalamu alaikum and thank you so much, Maulana, for your time.
Wa alaikum assalam. It's nice to join you on your show.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know a lot of our viewers are looking forward to listening in on some of the incidences that have been taking place in the UK. But before we get into that, could you take us back to how these riots were sparked off by false claims about Southport attackers' ethnicity and the origin that actually spread online?
Yeah, so it all started around this time last week. There was a dance class attended by very young girls, I think between the age of around 6 and 9. And an individual went in there with a knife and he started stabbing the girls that had attended this class. Unfortunately, initially the news came out that 2 of the girls had died, and the next day a 3rd girl had also died as well. And there were many others, girls who were injured, and many other people who tried to rescue the girls. They were also attacked and they were also injured as well. So at that time, I think the whole country kind of came together in grief and in shock to stand with the victims and the parents of the victims. But unfortunately, in this country, what happens is that if somebody is underage, under the age of 18, then the authorities are not allowed to release details of the suspect. While the details of the suspect had not been released, unfortunately, social media, and especially those who want to spread hate and propaganda against Muslims and against immigrants and against people of color, they started spreading the misinformation and the false news that the suspect was a Muslim. B, he had recently come on the boats, or recently has come as an illegal immigrant into the UK. And because the authorities are not allowed to release the information, it kind of created this vacuum where people were giving all kinds of misinformation, even a name as well, like Ali Al Akbar, that was being quoted widely on social media to say that that is the name of the suspect. So the following day, which is the Tuesday, they had a vigil. Again, it was very peaceful. The people of Stockport came together to pay their respects and stand in solidarity with the victims. And there were Muslims also who attended that as well. But unfortunately, on Tuesday evening, a group of far-right rioters, or they like to call themselves as protesters, but they're actually rioters. They decided to have a riot outside the Southport Mosque, and police were attacked. Many people were injured, and there was all kinds of obscene language and all kinds of things said. And I mean, it was just fortunate that the police were actually there. I mean, it's quite possible that the mosque would have been burnt down with the imam and with some worshippers inside. And thereafter, it just kind of spread throughout the country. So even though on Thursday the information was released, the suspect is not actually a Muslim. He is a British citizen. He is somebody who was born in Wales, and his parents are actually well integrated into society. But that didn't stop the riots. And over the weekend, I think we had about 20 different protests throughout the country. Some of them were peaceful, but some of them turned into riots. And the major ones were actually in Liverpool and Hull on Saturday, and yesterday one in Middlesbrough and in other parts of northern towns as well. So it's an anxious time for Muslims here, and everybody's just kind of anxiously waiting for what's going to happen now.
Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, it is a devastating incident that has taken place with the loss of life of those young children. But what we also learn from this incident is how dangerous misinformation can be. And we did have some visuals just now of some of the rioting that is taking place. So we do send our du'as to all the Muslims who are in the UK at the moment. Misinformation can be extremely dangerous, and it is now leading to some very racist remarks, a lot of racist actions, and like you said, a lot of riots that are leaving a lot of people in danger as well. And we now know that an emergency security meeting has been convened by the government. Do people still feel unsafe at the moment?
I mean, I think it depends on where exactly you live. I think if you live in an area where you have a large Muslim community and you're kind of surrounded by Muslims, you probably don't feel so unsafe. You're still anxious about what might happen, especially if you have to leave that particular area to go shopping or for any other reason. I think especially those Muslims that are living in isolated areas, they are still very anxious and they're very fearful of what the next few days or weeks or months might bring. Because I believe I've heard that on Wednesday, there are more protests or riots planned. And I think that the reaction from the government could have been much more stronger. So initially, they were basically saying that, yeah, it's understandable because of the unease that people have regarding immigration. So there is some way of kind of understanding that, yeah, people are upset and people are going to protest. But I think it was only yesterday when the protests turned really violent and mosques were being attacked, and especially hotels in which migrants are being housed were attacked, that the government took a much more stronger line. And they started saying that no, that there is no absolute justification for this at all. But still, while all this is happening, still on social media, and especially on X, now owned by Elon Musk, because I mean, especially for certain individuals, like for example, we have somebody called Tommy Robinson who has, made a career out of this, trying to cause riots and trying to cause hatred amongst communities. He had been banned, but once Elon Musk took over, he activated his account again. And even though he's not in the country, he's in Cyprus, but from there, he is kind of spreading still misinformation and trying to, cause people to go out and riot in this way. So there's still a long way to go, I think, before this comes to an end.
Absolutely. I mean, misinformation to this degree can cause a lot of hatred, like you said, and the hatred can absolutely then lead into violent actions, which we are seeing on our screens at the moment as well. We are actually seeing that taking place at the moment. But let's talk a little bit more about the immigrant population. I mean, the United Kingdom does have a fairly large immigrant population, and many of whom are even, in government, etc. Now, what is behind the tension between local white and black people and people of different races and backgrounds regarding the racial tensions, the immigration tensions, as well as particularly with people who have migrant roots?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in this country, I mean, even if you go back decades, I mean, there's always been a fringe far right, which have always, protested against the way the demographics are changing in this country, and especially, I mean, even from the 1950s and 1960s, when people from the Indian subcontinent and people from the Caribbean and Africa started moving to UK. They initially, they have been protesting, and some of those protesters have been violent, but they've always been kind of a very fringe minority group. I think what's happened in the last 2 decades or maybe 3 decades is that there are certain high-profile politicians, high-profile people in the press and media who are now also echoing those far-right sentiments as well. And that's something which has really changed. And especially, I think, what's happened in Gaza I mean, because we've seen this movie before. I mean, even when we had the illegal invasion of Iraq, I mean, to justify that and to kind of appease people who might otherwise kind of protest against that kind of thing, the press and media really, show a lot of negativity about Islam and about Muslims to kind of get people on board against that illegal invasion. And I think the same thing has happened now as well. So while the Gaza attacks have started, And while we've seen that there's thousands and thousands of people who have, decent people who have gone out to protest, the press and media, especially right-wing press and media, they have really started fomenting hate against Muslims, a lot of misinformation about Muslims, a lot of double standards, propaganda, lies against Muslims. And I think that has given some legitimacy to these far-right groups, and they've given them more confidence, thinking that, look, it's not just us as a small minority, but even people in very high-profile positions are actually supporting us as well. Because of that, it's just kind of all come together. And this attack last week on Monday has given them the perfect excuse to actually come together. And I mean, the big shame is, I mean, even if the suspect was a Muslim, that does not obviously give any right to anybody to attack a mosque or to attack innocent Muslims around the country. But I think what's happened is that even after it's become clear that this person is not a Muslim, he's most probably a Christian because he's from Rwanda. But nevertheless, it hasn't stopped people from expressing their points of view. So while there are a group of people who are still, peacefully protesting against the migrants or the way migrants have come into this country, which is perfectly legitimate in a democracy. But there's others who are trying to hijack the situation. And like I said, there's been many politicians and who should really be ashamed of themselves about what they have done and how they've allowed us to get into this situation, and how all the kind of peace and harmony that we had within communities have kind of just been broken and been torn apart because of their own political agendas.
Absolutely. It's devastating to see the level of Islamophobia that is driving so much of hate and violence in the riots that are taking place in the United Kingdom at the moment. But Maulana, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for shedding some insight and some information as to what is going on. And we do remember you and all our Muslim brothers and sisters in the UK at the moment. And we do make lots of dua that Allah Ta'ala may please keep you safe during this difficult time.
No, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be on your show. And can I just finally say that I would like to congratulate all the citizens of South Africa for being on the right side of history at this time. And it's something that the whole world is admiring you for. And we hope that because of that, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the highest reward. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant hidayat throughout the country, inshallah ta'ala, for standing up for justice and being at the forefront of the opposition to what is happening in the Middle East at the moment. Thank you very much.
Ameen. Thank you so much, Maulana. Viewers at home, that was Maulana who was talking to us directly from the UK regarding the violent riots and protests out of sheer Islamophobia after some misinformation spread about an incident, a stabbing incident rather, that took the lives of 3 young girls. Do share with us on our social media platforms your thoughts, and do share, your du'as and your comments for our Muslim brothers and sisters who are in a really difficult and unsafe situation at the moment in the United Kingdom. Misinformation can be extremely, extremely dangerous. But viewers at home, it is time for us to take an ad break, and we'll come right back.